بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So this is where we had left off last time, and we said that basically everything that is not from Allah, not for Allah, then it is not from this world, and whatever is for Allah, then it is not from this world. And there are a few things that we had mentioned, and we said there are a few ways to categorize these or this kind of perspective. And we said that the things that are haram, these are very clear that they are what? They're haram, and they're from this world. Okay, so he's saying that even going and dealing with halal is problematic. Why did he, what is the reasoning behind that? All right, because it increases accountability. The more I engage in something, even if it's halal, he's saying that my accountability actually increases. He said there are a few negative things that can happen from that, right? So if I know that my accountability increases, the time for hisab is what? Right? The accountability time in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it actually lengthens, it's longer, right? Or what is the other possibility? Remember we had said that the one who removes themselves from the dunya, then what happens in their status in the akhirah? Right, it goes higher. And a person who spends more time in the dunya and indulges in it, what happens? Right, he gets a lower status in paradise. So he's saying that you're losing in two ways. Either your accountability is going to be longer, or your status in paradise is going to be lower. So what is truly for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the most praised? And this is, I think, a very valid question. How is it that we make things for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone? Right? If I want to make sure that these actions that I'm doing are truly for Him Azza wa Jal, in order to make Him happy, in order to make sure that all my actions are for the next world, how do I keep them Allah-centric? How do I keep them Allah-focused? And he said there are three types of things, and these are things that we've discussed before, so you're not going to see anything particularly new. But those things that are clearly not for Him, and what are some of the things we mentioned last time that are not for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Sins. Ahsant. Good. What else? We mentioned even the things that are mubah, that it's possible. Right? So even the things that are permissible, it's possible they're not for Him. How? Huh? To what extent? Because this is what you're saying is closer to the third category. Apples are what? They're good. They're halal, right? What if I eat like 17 apples in one go? Right? Indulgence. Right? Indulgence. Extravagance. Right? These are all real problems, real issues. Even though the item itself might be what? Might be permissible. Might be jaiz. The second one, those things that are for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like what? There are three things he mentioned very specifically last time. Okay, worship is definitely part of it. Loving is definitely part of it. Fear, Allahu Akbar. I don't know, we're getting back to this. You missed it? He said dhikr, wa? Fikr and amal. What is dhikr is remembrance, fikr is pondering, and amal is actions. Right? So he said these are the three things that are extremely important, and they're done for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From actions are loving, from actions are fearing, from actions are praying. Right? All of these things are really important. Pondering over the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is something that He Azza wa Jal has actually commanded all of us with. Pondering is not specific for who? It's not specific for the prophets. It's not specific for who else? It's not for scholars either. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. It's like, do they not ponder over the Qur'an, or is it that there are locks over their hearts? So over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, where are the locks? The locks are not with what? Right, the locks are with us. The locks are here. They're around our hearts. And what are some of the ways to unlock those layers? I'm sorry? Right, mentioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, doing isti'adha, having a focused reading, making sure that I'm understanding what I'm reading, right? So there are a number of things that we can do, a number of layers we can remove, because the purpose is for the Qur'an to enter our hearts, right? We want it to. And the Qur'an is not the obstacle. The obstacle is is me, right? I'm the obstacle. I need to remove myself in order for the Quran to enter my heart, because that's the nature of the Book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those that are dependent on intention, like what? I'm sorry? Right, like the mundane things that we do. Yeah, walking. Walking is, what is the ruling on walking? Haram, right? No, I'm saying there's khilaf, right? So walking is permissible, eating is permissible, drinking is permissible, right? Marriage, all of these things are permitted. So how do I make those for Allah? With intention, right? That's what's going to differentiate these things. And where do we learn this? Very famously in the Hadith of niyyah, right? The Hadith of Intention, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that actions are surely by intention. So the state of the heart after death, he had said that those things that are not for the dunya, sins, impermissible actions, indulgence, and those things that are for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like remembrance, pondering, actions, right? Dhikr wa fikr wa amal. And he said, but if it's done for a worldly gain, such as status or fame. What does he mean? Like what? I'm sorry? Who dhakar Allah. Like this individual is someone who always remembers Allah. But why is that a problem? We can't praise people? There might be what? Riya. And what does riya do to actions? It destroys them. It destroys them. So here, if this is one example of that, if I'm doing it out of fame, if I come to the masjid early, why? So that people can see me come early. Not because what? Because I want, not because of the ajr, not because I want to draw near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not because there's more reward in doing that. Right? And some of us might be like, oh, well, how often does that really happen, and blah, blah, blah. Unfortunately, it happens a lot more than we think. A very clear example of that, something that maybe some of us have experienced, where people, they'll park illegally, and then they'll say, I'm coming to the masjid, I'm coming to pray. Say, what is the relationship between these two things? Or people will come, like I've seen it happen in this office. Well, can we use the employee bathroom? It's like, why? Oh, I'm one of the first people, I put the first brick in this masjid. You put the first brick in the masjid to use the employee bathroom. Right? So essentially, what is he asking for? He's asking for special treatment. So did I do this action because I wanted Allah to be happy with me, or did I do this action because I wanted special treatment? And it happens, right? These things, it can completely undermine all of our actions without many times us realizing it. And we have to be very careful. And we'll talk about that, and we'll spend a little bit more time on that, inshallah. And there's a very famous hadith of what? The scholar, the qari, and the, right, and the mujahid. That these individuals, like, these are actions that they were doing that were meant to be, supposed to be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but why did they do them? Right, so that they would become known, right? It was for fame. Right, so that he was known to be brave. He was known to be as a mujahid, as a fighter. And lastly, those things that are dependent. So, for example, how do I make sure that my intention is correct when it comes to things like eating or drinking or marriage? So, if it's just for self-preservation, right? If I'm drinking, so drinking because I'm thirsty, is that okay? Water. Nice try though. Subia, drinking subia. Right? So, if I'm drinking, like in the example that he gave was cold water, right? So he said, like, if I'm drinking cold water, I'm drinking juice, I'm drinking something nice, all of these things are halal, and there's nothing wrong with that, essentially, but what? It is not, it's not preferred, right? It's not preferred. So this is something I would be like khilaf al-awla. Versus strengthening oneself. And what does he mean by that? So he said, like, okay, well, if I drink with the intention of strengthening myself, what does he mean? So the difference between these two is, one, I'm using it as, they're both a means, right? So all of this, these are tools, right? These are all tools. Now, am I using these tools to strengthen myself, or am I using it to strengthen what? Right, my proximity or my iman, right? So these are things that are really important. And I have to understand that I need to use these tools in the proper way. He mentions a couple verses here. He says, وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَى فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَى, and he restrained himself from his base desires. Paradise will be his home. What is Ghazāli trying to tell us here? Based on the theme and the discussion that we're having. Right, don't indulge. Right, and it's really important not to indulge. And we had said before that, is it possible to cut ourselves off from the dunya? No, right? It's not a realistic goal. But the reason that we find Ghazāli going so extreme in this is why, right? It's just that resetting that personal gauge, right? Resetting that personal gauge. So he says desires can be categorized into 5. So he says there's 5 major categories, and he based it off of this verse. It says, أنما الحياة الدنيا لعب وله وزينة وتفاخر بينكم وتكاثر في الأموال والأولاد. So this present life is just a game, a diversion, an attraction, a cause of boasting among you, of rivalry in wealth and children. What are the 5? You guys, what are the 5 categories? Game, diversion, attraction, boasting. Children's not a category, right? And rivalry. Ahsantum. That's good. So these are the 5 here. These are the 5 categories. And if you actually think about why it is that we're working toward dunya, it will not escape these 5 categories. SubhanAllah, man, like I was looking at this one, right? So I was actually thinking about takathur. Yes? Hmm. Yeah. Absolutely, right? Absolutely. What is the ayah? It's من المؤمنين شراء أنفسهم. What's شو الآية? Basically, the meaning of the ayah is that there are people who've sold themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning that once the sale happens, what is left? Nothing. The asset is done, right? The sila, or the product, is, once it's sold, no part of that product remains in this world. And this idea of going to that extent, there's a story that he shares in the end. And I want to talk about it. It's like it's a really interesting story. But these things, like even the rivalry, the reason I was thinking about this is once you start making like $300,000-$400,000 a year, why do they keep making more money? Like you will find that most needs are taken care of. Like when you reach that point, because someone else is making more. And it's crazy, right? The only reason that happens is because it's just rivalry. That's it. That's the only thing that is pushing many of these people. It's not because there's a need for more money, right? They've actually plateaued in terms of like fulfilling daily needs. But even this, like boasting, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the way he's describing the dunya, is there anything praiseworthy here? No, not at all, not really. Right? These are all just, it's Allah's way of belittling these things. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he brings 7 examples of where this happens. So he says, زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ وَالْبَنِينَ وَالْقَنَاطِيرِ الْمُقَنطَرَةِ مِنَ الذَّهَبِ وَالْفِضَّةِ وَالْخَيْلِ الْمُسَوَّمَةِ وَالْأَنْعَامِ وَالْحَرْثِ ذَلِكَ مَتَاعُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَاللَّهُ عِنْدَهُ حُسْنُ الْمَآبِ. It says the love of desirable things is made alluring for men, women, children, gold and silver treasures piled up high, horses with fine markings, livestock and farmland. These may be the joys of this life, but Allah has the best place to return to. So what are the 7 here? What are the 7 things or items that he says? Women, children. Gold and silver are separate or together? You think they're together? Okay. And then gold and silver. Then what's next? Horses, livestock, farmland. That's 6. So gold and silver, he points them out separately. Right, so there's store of value, but they're also used in other ways. Like what? Jewelry, right? Very famously. Gold and silver historically have been used as means of jewelry. Even today, right? Even today, they're definitely used for jewelry. In addition to what other metal? Like, so if you go into a jewelry store, it's predominantly it'll be gold and silver. What else is used? Right, diamonds. But diamonds, you don't have just diamonds. It's usually embedded in gold or silver, or platinum. Right, would be the other one, but it's mostly for men. So these things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses them as examples because, well, they're just meant to be examples. And who is He Azza wa Jal speaking to? Right, who's the first audience? Right, okay, man. Well, he's speaking to the companions, right? He's speaking to the companions. And when he's speaking to the companions, He Azza wa Jal is addressing them with the things that they would seek out, right? For those of us that are here, like, not everybody's not everybody wants to take care of livestock, right? Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, it's not a thing. For some people, like horses, like, yeah, horses are beautiful. I don't know if I'd want like nice horses, you know? But maybe offering a nice car, right? Or a yacht or a jet, right? These are things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He didn't mean for these to be the limited. This is not an exhaustive list. They're just meant to be examples. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically telling us all of these things are from the dunya. And it doesn't matter what this list is. I will use these as a means to what? I hope that I use them as a means to Allah. Allah uses them as what? As a test. Ahsant. So how do we define actions? Actions are tools. And he basically categorizes these into two larger categories. He says that in order for me to, how do I determine that? So, right, so we have two problems here. The problem, we have the halal haram issue, and then we have the indulgence issues. So he's saying that, listen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not put us here without giving us the tools to help us navigate these things, right? So he says there are two major tools that are used. He says, number one, knowledge of intention, meaning that essentially I know what? I know myself. Essentially, I know myself and I know why I'm doing this particular action. The other thing that he gives us is knowledge of need. I know what? So let me help with this a little bit. So knowledge of intention, I know if I'm doing this for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or if I'm not. So these two, like, in the moment I do it for Allah, I know that it is not from this world and that I'm okay and I'm safe. The combination of these things is essentially, what do we call this? Where I'm going back and I'm checking my intention. All right, muhasabah is one name for it. What else? What other name do we use? What other term do we use that's very important and fundamental to deen? And it's related to the heart, remember. Okay. Taqwa, ahsant. Right? So that's essentially what taqwa is, right? Constantly reminding and remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make sure that my intention is sound. And if my intention is sound, then it'll be for Him, Azza wa Jal. And I'm kind of just, checking on myself constantly and trying to create that positive feedback loop. And this is a theme, we've seen time and time again throughout Ghazāli's work. So this knowledge of need is basically how much. Who determines how much I need? Right, I do. I determine how much I need. Is it fair for somebody to come to me and be like, that's israf, akhi? You're being indulgent. Does that work? Why? How come it doesn't work? I'm sorry? All right, there's different circumstances. Not just that. Right, every person is different. This person cannot tell me how much I need. Only I can define that. And we had said also that I'm guaranteed not to fall into israf if two conditions are filled. Right? If I'm making sure Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rights are being fulfilled, and the rights of those that are around me, right? So the rights of Allah and the rights of people. If I'm fulfilling these two things, right, it's my money, right? And it is halal. But at what point does it enter indulgence? Right, when these two things are neglected, and I am the one that gets to determine when it's too much. Right? This would be the third meter that is put in place. So, who defines for me how large a home I should buy? I do. Who determines how much clothing I should have or what kind of clothing I should have? I do. Right? It's easy to say, oh, you should wear like rough clothing, blah, blah. What if I'm constantly uncomfortable? How effective is my salah going to be? It's like, no, I'm going to buy the cheapest clothes, and every time I go out, something's ripping, right? Or every time I'm going out, it's just the threads are breaking apart, right? I'm buttoning it, and the button's coming off. Okay, yeah, I went to the cheapest. I tried to be this, but I don't feel good in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't feel good with myself. I don't feel comfortable. How effective is my prayer going to be? Huh? It can be, right? It can be. I don't want to say that it's always riyā. I think it definitely can be if you're doing it to show other people. But if I'm actually trying to be like, okay, I'm trying to scale back as much as I can, right? Like me personally, I want to scale back as much as I can, and I don't want to be musrif, right? I don't want to be the person that falls into indulgence. So what do? I have to keep scaling back. Totally. Right? I want to be a zahid, right? Like I want to. This is what I want. Like I want to be a zahid, and I don't want to be attached to the dunya. So what am I going to do? I'm going to keep scaling back, and I might get to a point where it's like, okay, I'm wearing these rough clothes, and then I'm like, yeah, this is not effective. Like this is just not working for me. Like I feel worse, right? And sometimes we have that experience. Yes. Oh, zahid is like an abstinent, someone who tries to divorce themselves from this world. So you're trying to make all these efforts to like escape the dunya. Tfadal Mahdi. Yeah. So I might be able to call them out if they're doing something haram, but as for that internal gauge, can I judge them based off of that? You understand? So you're right. Okay, like, hey, yeah, I got like a $10,000 A5 Wagyu, you know what I mean, like corner cut from a piece of steak, you know what I mean? And so, but I also make $73 million a year. Yeah, there's a difference. There's always a better way to do things. Even you, okay, طيب يا أخي, what? No, I just live off of barley. Right? No, why? Because there's a better way to use your money. You can never enforce better, right? We can't. Like we're never in a position where we can enforce people to do better. We can help people do good, but being better, that's something that's it's not mandatory, right? It's something that's extra. And some like, oh, help the poor. Okay, which poor do I help? Right? In Kenya, like Usman knows, right? In like Yemen, what's happening over there in Kashmir, right? Like, how do I decide? Where does the money go? Or do I do it locally? You know what I mean? Like, we have to understand there's so many causes out there. And I'm not saying that, because there's so many causes, you don't have to do anything. No, that's not the point I'm making. I'm saying there's so many causes out there, there's always going to be something better. There's always going to be a better option. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He hasn't obligated us with the better option. He's obligated us with the what? With the good option. And in the things that I want to do and I'm passionate about, like, mashallah, man, like when you have a diverse community, there are people who are passionate about different things. Some people are passionate about Palestine. Some people are passionate about Kashmir. Some people are passionate about Yemen. And you know what's good? You need people in all of those fields. Like you need somebody passionate about something. Like you need that. But I can't come to you and be like, no, like the issue in Israel is more, worse than in Yemen. Who am I to judge that? Right, I'm not in that position. I can't judge what is worse, what is better. Everybody's going to have their own individual passions that they have to pursue, and that is a way. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, "Kullu muyassar lima khuliqa lah." He says that you will do a person does what is easy for them because that is what they were created for. Right. So if I'm created to work in the political sphere, if I'm created to work in the religious sphere, if I'm created to work like in academia or whatever the case might be. I meant run with it. Like if there's something I'm good at and I enjoy, man, I have to run with it. I have to, like because that passion is what's going to keep me going when I'm kind of slow and I'm kind of down. Is that a question? Yes. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. I mean, so that you can, if you're able to, right? So I don't want to live a luxurious life off of debt, right? if I can afford it, because the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Inna Allah jamil wa yuhibbu al-jamal," right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He loves beauty because He Azza wa Jalla is beautiful Himself. So is it okay to be luxurious and to look nice? And yeah, absolutely. And if a person when he dresses nice and he feels good and he's coming to the masjid and he feels good, how's his salah going to be? Right? It's going to be good. It'll allow, so all of these things, because he did them, it allowed him to focus more on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and without having to worry about these things. And I mean, I know not all of you are independent, but like just an example, if I don't know how I'm going to pay rent, how's my salah going to be? Right? If I don't know what I'm going to eat today, are there some people who might be in a higher state of khashya, like, when they're like that? Yeah, absolutely. But if someone's not used to that, someone who just lost their job, or someone who doesn't know where their income is going to come from, or what's going to happen, when they go for salah, what are they constantly going to be thinking about? Right? About their problem. But ideally, once those problems are cleared, or if I don't have to worry about those things, it allows me to be that much more focused. And that's the point that he's trying to make here. So he says there's a space here, though, that's in between, right? So when we talk about how much I define my need, he said that there's a space in there that falls in between, and these are called hajat, right? These are called wants. Those needs, they're called dururiyat, right? Those are necessities. And he was like, okay, well, when you get to those necessities, there's kind of an in-between space. There's an in-between space between tana'um, which is like kind of indulging, and then you have your needs. And he says that these two things, there's constantly like a battle between them, right? Between the needs and the indulgence. And he says, in this space is where the hajat fall. In this space, between the needs and the indulgence, these are where the hajat fall. And most of us, he says, are going to fall into this. Most of us. Yes, Aus. Over here. So, but he says that we should do our best to lean toward what? Toward the needs. He said we should do our best. That even though we know that we're going to fall into these hajats, we're going to fall into these wants, we should always try to lean more toward, err on the side of caution by leaning more into those needs than leaning, because it's much, right? It's easier to fall into indulgence. It's easier to fall into indulgence versus trying to stay within those needs. And he says, but in here, he says that most people don't reach this absolute bare necessity point. He said most people can't. He said that this station where the people only utilize needs are for two. He said this is only for the anbiya and for the awliya. These are the only people who can reach those. Now, is it impossible to become a wali? No, right? What is a wali? A wali very essentially is mu'minun taqi. A believer who has taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from the muttaqeen and make us from His awliya. Ameen. So here, this is the story that he kind of ends with. It's something. I'll read it to you guys. But he says, Uwais al-Qarni used to, so his family, I'm sorry, I forgot to add that in. Let me fix that real quick. So Uwais al-Qarni's family used to think that he was crazy due to the harsh stipulations he would put on himself. They built a room for him near the entrance of the house, and this is his family. And sometimes a year, 2 or 3 would pass by and they wouldn't even see him. Why wouldn't they see him? Because he would leave at the first adhan, right? The first adhan for Fajr is when it's still what? Right, it's still dark out. And then he would come back at the end of Isha, meaning that he left when it was dark and he came home when it was dark. He would sustain himself off of the date pits, meaning that he would like kind of suck the date pits because there'd be a little piece of the date left on that. And if he ever happened upon low quality dates, he would hide them for his iftar, meaning that he would keep them until it was time to break his fast. If he would not find any of these dates, he would sell his date pits and buy that which would suffice his appetite. Like just in date pits, like how much money you're going to get for those? Right, not a lot. You're not going to get a lot of money for those. He would wear clothes he found in the trash, pieces of bags and then wash them in the river and then stitch them together and wear it. This is what he wore. When he would pass by children, they would throw rocks at him, thinking he was crazy. And he would say to them, "My children, if you must throw rocks at me, please use pebbles, for I fear that I may bleed and the time of prayer comes and I don't find water to remove the blood." What do you guys think about? Is it extra? I mean, it's taken from like Risala Qushayriya. Like I don't give a lot of Awais al-Qarni. Yeah, man, it's like Awais al-Qarni. Yeah, this is like super far-fetched. But what is the purpose of sharing such a story? Right, he's showing that the extent of zuhud, right? If you really wanted to get down to the bone, right? If you really wanted to strip down and take back all the layers of the dunya, how far away can you get from it? And he's saying that, wearing clothes from the garbage, you know what I mean? Like, and the thing is, don't think of like landfills like we have today. You have to understand, like tailors, when they're throwing away extra pieces of cloth, what would they do? They'd have a pile, that's where he probably got, these from. I mean, I don't even think this story is real, honestly. But, so, again, he's just showing the extent of what happened. Like this is how much you can actually scale back. Right, this is how far away you can actually get from the dunya, whether it be Awais or other than him. But here, we have a hadith that's sahih in Muslim that is a better representation of Awais than this. And basically, you have Usayd ibn Jabir. He reported that a delegation from Kufa came to Umar, and there was a person amongst them who jeered at Awais. Thereupon Umar said, "Is there amongst us one from Qarn?" That person came, and Umar said, "Allah's Messenger ﷺ has said there would come to you a person from Yemen who would be called Awais, and he would leave none in Yemen except his mother, and he would have the whiteness, meaning that he had leprosy. And what happened is like he was healed, right? So he had leprosy, and then it went away, but he was still scarred, right? So he had like, I'm sorry? Yeah, it was like a dirham-sized scar that was left on his skin. And he supplicated Allah, and it was cured except for the size of a dinar or dirham, right? And then he who amongst you meets him should ask him to supplicate for forgiveness. And why is that? The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said very specifically, what was the fadl of Awais al-Qarni? What was his virtue? What was he known for? هُوَ كَانَ بَارٌ لِوَالِدِتِهِ. Yeah, he used to be obedient to his mother. And the Prophet ﷺ told Umar, right, of all people, he says that if you come across him, then ask him for maghfirah. Right, ask him to supplicate for you for forgiveness. And again, this is actually authentic, right? This is actually authentic, and this is sound on Awais, but this is not representative of the zuhud, right? It's not really representative of the zuhud and the abstinence. But going back to this story, again, the idea is to peel back as much as we can. And it's hard, right? It's hard going through these changes. It's hard, kind of seeing where we're at. But being in those uncomfortable spaces is where we should try to be, right? I don't know how much I can deal with unless I actually go and put myself into that situation, right? If I don't know, if I've always ate well, it becomes that much harder to go hungry. Right? But when I go hungry, what happens? I can appreciate it more, right? I can appreciate it more, right? I can appreciate it a lot more. So these things are really important to keep in mind, and also to help us and to teach us on how to scale back. So he says here, such as the biographies of those who intend the next life, refusing this world, and this should have been made clear by looking at the biographies of the prophets and walis. So if I really want to look at people who dealt with adversity, people who dealt with hardship, people who were actually stripped of many of their worldly goods. Even the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? When it was when they had put the embargo on all of the Muslims and anybody who worked with the Muslims, right? It was really hard times. They really faced a lot of difficulty. They faced a lot of persecution, and it was through that persecution, through that adversity, that we build character, right? And this is why the Ulul Azm, this is why the great prophets were who they were, because of the hardship and difficulty that they faced. And he says here that the extent of this world is the shadow of greenery and the least of the earth except that which is used for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The opposite of this world is the next. And he uses an example. The example he uses as, okay, hey, just imagine if you're making Hajj. Just imagine if you're making Hajj. Tafadhal, ya akhi. I'm sorry? No. That's very different. There's a difference between seeking difficulty and kind of resetting my personal, like, we shouldn't be like, all right, I'm going to go to a bar to test myself to see if I can't drink, right? No, that's not what's intended here. What's intended here is that, okay, how much can I distance myself from the dunya, right? That's not seeking there's a difference between that and saying like, okay, I'm going to walk to the masjid, and even though it's like 7 miles away, that's not what the purpose of this discussion is. That's not the goal. The goal of this is like, how do I distance myself from the dunya? How do I cut off that love for this dunya? How do I break that relationship? And breaking that relationship, sometimes it can involve, like, and he's spoken about this previously, right? He talks about starvation sometimes. He talks about denying, so this self-denial, of not seeking those pleasures. Why? Because I want to do that so that so I'm able to break that relationship that I had with it. Right? So if I love cheesecake, what should I do? I should avoid eating it, right? It's not difficulty. Like, so I maybe I use the term in the wrong way, but the idea is not to add difficulty. The idea is to remove ourselves and starve ourselves of certain things, and I don't mean starving just in a eating sense, but starving ourselves from like luxuries and certain things. Why? Because when I come back and I kind of like, my gauge has been reset, it allows me to appreciate those things more, and the love that I had for them is now gone. So he uses the example here of the Hajj. So basically, if an individual, he swears, he said, I'm going to go for Hajj, and the only thing I'm going to do is focus on Hajj. He mentions here, he says that, okay, well, this person, he's going to feed himself, he's going to feed his camel, he might listen to other people talking on the way. He said that this individual will not have broken his oath, even though he's doing these other things. Why? Because all those other things are what? Right, he needs them to make his Hajj. And this is the example Imam Ghazāli wants us to take. Right, that this world is meant to be a tool. But we're not the Hajj, we're the Salik, right? We're the seekers. And what are we seeking? We're seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if I want to seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I will use this world as a tool. I'll use it as a means, I'll use it as a vehicle. And he says that. He says that this body, all it is a vehicle. That's it. This body is just a vehicle. The soul is using this body to get to its destination. So even when we take a drive, I'm worried about, I need to make sure that, that there's fluid in the radiator, and I need to make sure that there's gas in the tank, right? I need to make sure the tires are rotated. I do all of those things because I love the car? No, right? It's because the better I take care of this car, the easier it'll be for me to get to my destination, right? Technically, can I get there with 3 wheels? Yeah, but it's not going to be a comfortable ride, right? Huh? You can't? Maybe if it's a Cressida, maybe. So it's like a Saudi joke, man. But anyway, so we try to make the ride as seamless as possible, because the goal is to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to enter His paradise. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enter us into His paradise. Ameen. So if he intends to enjoy some of these means, then he has strayed from the next world, fearing that his heart has become hard, right? So that should be heart, not hard. And this is again this idea that he had talked about of erring on the side of caution and focusing specifically on what? Trying to keep focused on the what? All right, stay focused on the akhirah, but these on the scale of how much needs, right? I should try to stay more focused on the needs side. Tanafisi, he said, I was at Bani Shayba entrance of Masjid al-Haram for 7 days, starving, and heard on the 8th night between sleep and wake, woe to the one who takes from this world more than is necessary. Allah blinds his insight. What do you guys think about this? I think he was hallucinating because he hadn't eaten for a week. This is the reality of this world in regard to you. So know that you will be guided, inshallah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the tools. He's given us the means. Allah, He promises us saying, "La yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wusaha." It's not possible Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would put us in situations without at least the tools to be able to navigate out of them. So it's important that we learn how to use these tools. It's important that we do muhasabat an-nafs, that we reflect and we make sure that our intentions are correct, and to make sure that the amount we're using is the actual amount. And how do I know that? The only way I can know that is when I fully scale back, right? So the more I scale back, and if it gets to a point, it's like, okay, I don't think I could any more than this. It's at that point be like, okay, my gauge is set. Let me get back into life, and I'll find in myself that I'm not as attached to having a nice phone as I was before, right? It wasn't as important for me to have like massaging car seats, right? And I mean, like, and I'm just using these as examples, but at the end of the day, it's like it really helps give perspective, and that's the idea, that we should always try to get perspective, whether it be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or whether that be with ourselves. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqin nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Any questions? No? خلاص, I'll see you guys next week, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.